I think it's going. All right, cool.
All
Awesome.
right.
Cool. Well, thanks everyone for coming. And Shannon, thanks so much for being here today. Um, I'm a huge fan of your work just all around. And it's really, really awesome to have you with us today.
Thanks for inviting me, man. It's so cool. I'm a fan myself, and just glad to be here.
And we did get a chance to meet when you were working on Ice, the Google Spotlight story, which is awesome. I love it with
Thank you.
Mark Oftedal, Lou Romano, and just like an incredible team of people that you put together. And I just remember like being inspired by what you guys were doing and the kind of the creative freedom that you had. I mean, you were the director and you had full creative control. And I want to dive into that in just a moment. But before I do, I just want to make sure you guys know a little bit about Shannon, because the guy is like a ninja and does pretty much everything. But I mean, you've done character design for some of my favorite things, Samurai Jack, Coraline, and the upcoming Kubo and Two Strings. You're also the writer of Kubo and Two Strings. Is that correct? Or the creator?
It's story by Mark Hames wrote it along with Chris Butler. I created it and developed it. I was actually the original director. So yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you were a story artist on it as well, yeah?
Yeah, I did story. I boarded like the first 6 minutes of it. I like to dip my toes in everything.
Yeah.
I did story at Dreamworks before, so I like to do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, and then now it's kind of hard because I know that you do lots of stuff. It says that you're working at Sony. Is that correct, or?
Well, what I'm actually doing right now is I'm on an overall development deal at Disney TV Animation. I'm pointing in the direction of the studio.
Over there.
And so I'm actually focused in right now on a new TV project, an idea that I had. So I'm developing that right now.
Wow.
But I'm also, I have a film at Sony that I'm writing with Mark Hames again, who wrote Kubo. He's writing Nimona with Patrick Osborne.
Yeah,
and I'm
nice.
to direct that one, and we're going to be turning that first draft in a couple of weeks.
Wow, congrats, man. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I wanted to bring you here into the Creator Roundtable. So the Creator Roundtable is a place for us to kind of create this global brain trust of artists that are, creating projects or directing projects through Artella. And the thought is just to get everybody together, once a month to share ideas, to talk about challenges that they may be having with their story, managing artists, different things like how to get the, they're stuck on their story idea like this, and just to be able to bring that kind of stuff to one place where we could share and grow so that you don't feel like it's just you stuck in a room, trying to make this thing. So it's great.
It's really great because I think it's something that if you're not a complete idiot, you're constantly vetting your stuff through your friends. So, I have a group of friends who I'm constantly running ideas by Mark Hames is one of them. Jorge Gutierrez is another one.
Yeah.
Like I joke, like Jorge and I probably talk to Jorge more than anybody, but it's all through texts.
Yeah.
And and constantly just sharing material because you want it to be better. And I know that, especially when you're writing, you're working in isolation a lot, and you need to kind of come out of that hole and share it with people so they can give a different perspective on it. And it really is collaboration is at the heart of everything that I like to do.
That's huge.
So, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I know for me when I was doing animation, that was always the best. The best ideas weren't just the ideas that I came up with. They were actually like someone would be like, well, what if you did that? And someone would be like, what if you did that? And I'm like, oh, man, that's so much better than I would have done.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of see, you were asking me about ideas and story and kind of process.
Mm-hmm.
And with me, the way I kind of step through things is I'll have an idea. It usually comes from something very personal. In the instance of Kubo, it was inspiration from my wife's mother who had dementia, and how do I tell that story? Big inspiration from Japanese folk tales, and turn that into something. In the case of On Ice, it was a silly little idea that I had when I was back at Cal Arts that I never finished. But in both of those instances, I had the idea, and then I get into heavy research And as I'm going through it and I'm thinking about story, it's about tone. And I think that really the director is the protector of tone. So once you've decided on what your tone is, and because you're protecting the tone, that allows for a lot of ideas to come in.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go, yes, that's right for the tone of the film, or it's not right for the tone of the film. You know, I typically find that when I'm collaborating, ideas fall in a couple different categories. It's, you know, that's an amazing idea,
Mm-hmm.
and I love it, but it doesn't work for the whole of the film.
Mm-hmm.
That idea doesn't work at all. Or the third one, it's an amazing idea. Let's plug it in. Let's find a way to make it work, you know.
Yeah.
And as long as you're kind of protecting the tone and you've got an idea of where you want to go, you know, as Alexander McKendrick says, if you think you don't have a beginning, it's really because you don't have an end. You got to figure out where your story is going first so that you know where you're going, instead of just writing, you know, and hoping that you're going to land somewhere.
Yeah.
So
that's cool. A couple things come up there, and if you guys have any questions, please do submit them. We have one already, which we'll get to in a few moments. But is that protecting of the tone, like, is it easy to forget what that tone is, or how do you like remind yourself? Do you like write it down, or is it just something that you just ingrain in your brain? Like, how does that work?
Well, there's the way that I think tone has a lot to do with gut feel.
Mm-hmm.
And you just know when you look at something whether it's tonally right or not. And somebody who I'm a huge fan of that I don't think people talk about enough is Stephen Chow. And this is a guy who he can flip the tone in the middle of the movie beautifully, where it's super intensely emotional and you kind of a heartbreaking scene, and then he flips it and it's comedy. And I haven't seen guys since Chaplin or Buster Keaton, all those silent comedians, which a lot of the amazing, like Jackie Chan, the Chinese directors are heavily influenced by.
Yeah.
Because the way that they told stories, because it was silent, is universal. And so, you know, if it's going to be like with On Ice, I say make it stupid.
Mm-hmm.
That means it's awkward and silly and at times uncomfortable, and that's the tone of it.
Yeah.
And that's where you just keep in, and that's where once you have it kind of settled, you have to protect it.
Mm-hmm.
And with Kubo, the idea wasn't, hey, it's not ever going to be this out and out comedy. It's going to have comedic elements, but it's an action adventure film with a very simple family story at its heart. That's what that was. So, that's, you know, again, it's sometimes it has to do with an image that I'll create that carries what the tone is. Sometimes it's something that I've written down in the beginning. Sometimes it's that first scene that you write. But I always keep it because you have to keep pointing back to it and say, guys, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. I have to remind myself, too. It's not just me kind of talking to the crew. It's me saying, you know what? I might have a great idea that doesn't fit with the tone. It happens all the time. And I go back and you know what? That's not what we're making here.
Yeah.
And I'll have to.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, it's kind of like the North Star, right? It's like, boom, there's our beacon. That's what we're hitting. That's what we're shooting for.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things you said is if you don't have a beginning, it's because you don't have an end, or, you know, you don't know where you're going. Now, you know, what's that process look like? I mean, the skeleton of an idea, is it like kind of figure out those key beats, like character starts like this, and then I want to tell a story that feels like this. It's going to kind of end like that. Like, how do you get that skeleton, like beginning, middle, end, like kind of roughed out?
The classic approach to that, you know, is, I'm sure a lot of the folks listening right now know, is if you have a character that starts here, him changing or her changing and transforming throughout it is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they start here, they have a move to make, and you want them to be different by the end of it.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they're a completely different person, but they've learned something along the way. So that's a good general way. Now, you know, I love guys like Robert McKee and Blake Snyder. I think people can use those guys as a crush too much, and I don't think those guys intended their writings to be used as a formula at all. I think they're just making observances, and I think many times you have to look at what your gut is. If you look at the way Guillermo del Toro makes films, it's very much gut, and it's more kind of fairy tale logic, but it's still logic. You know, if my point of view is classic. Like, look at Marty McFly in Back to the Future. Is that a guy who really changes? No, the world changes because of things that he does, but he doesn't really change.
That's true. Yeah.
And a lot of people say, well, your character has to change, but no, something has to change. Otherwise, if it's just status quo, it's just this flatline rhythm that doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's where I kind of start is what is change? And change is usually instigated by conflict, and conflict, story comes out of that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, that was cool to hear the kernel of Kubo, which I'm super excited to see. It was a story about dementia, like from your family. So it kind of there was the kind of the key idea in dealing with that and like this kind of family, experience. So I mean, it's neat that whether it's make it stupid in the case of On Ice or something truly deeply personal, that those are like kind of driving forces around the type of piece that you want to create or the story that you want to tell, or because at the end of the day it's storytelling, right? And you want to share this story with other people so it touches them in some way, makes them laugh or makes them feel something. I think that's like the power of story and why it's so exciting,
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah, and I think if it's not something personal, then it won't resonate with other people. I wrote something recently that was I grew up in the South. I grew up in Kentucky in a small town, and I wrote something that was very specific to that, and I gave it to friends of mine who don't know what that experience is like at all. And I was actually working with Dave Eggers a little bit, and I would like run past Dave and like, hey, read this, and he just kept saying, all that personal stuff, it doesn't matter that I didn't grow up there. I can relate to it in my way because I had similarities. And it also makes it unique when it's that personal. And so the feedback that I got, Jorge grew up in Mexico City and Tijuana, and he was like, dude, all that personal stuff, I never grew up doing that, but I did things like it and I can relate to it.
That's cool.
Osborne took a look at it and he was like, dude, same deal. So it's those kinds of things where if it's personal, it's not generic, and people can grab onto those things that they can relate to about it.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. We'll see. We have a couple questions here. This one's from Tyler. Let's see. He said, once you find the perfect, or once you find the tone, protect it. How do you find it among so many directors? Let's see.
Or directions.
Yeah. Directions. There you go. Yeah.
Well, that's just the job of, to me, like storyteller, director, you got to make a decision.
Yeah.
And you got to go with that decision. And the more quickly you make that decision, the faster you can go in a direction. Yeah. And start to chip away at it. You'll find very quickly if it's not working. But for me, the tone of something, I think tone has a lot to do with personality. There's certain things that I like and that are specific to me, like my sense of humor. If you look at On Ice, I just inherently think there's something for me that's really funny about the unexpected. And a bear randomly showing up to an ice show, to me, is funny. It might not be funny to everybody else.
Yeah.
But that's a specific tone to the comedy. It's not slapstick. It's the unexpected, something happening that was not supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And that's just a matter of me like making the decision and saying, okay, this is the tone, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with choosing shots or choosing a story arc. You've got to make a decision. You got to pick one, and you got to pick one quickly, and that's where you just go with gut, and then you just follow it.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool, man. No, I'm not sure if you guys have seen On Ice, but you can check it out. I'm pretty sure you can check it out on your phone. I have an Android phone. I don't know if it works on.
Yeah, it's free on Apple. You just download the Spotlight Stories app for free, and you can get all of it. And you got Jan Pinkova, and Mark Offsedal, and Lynn Keane, and
Patrick Osborne did one.
Justin Lin, Patrick Osborne.
Or Patrick Osborne, yeah.
Yeah, all these amazing, and they're all free.
I know, they're all free.
And they're all specific to those artists because we all have the same freedom on those.
I'm going to type this Spotlight Stories there. Google Spotlight Stories app. Yeah, for now, like if you have an Android phone, which I do, I just go to YouTube and it automatically detects it, and immediately I can like start interacting with it. Like I don't have to, there's not even an app anymore. It's like
Yeah,
just
well,
right
it's
built into YouTube.
That's on Android phones, but not yet for iOS. So
Okay.
they're working on that now.
Okay, so if you're on iOS, there's an app for it. But I highly recommend checking it out because for me, I know the Spotlight guys fairly well. I've been over there like a bunch and stuff, talking to them about different things. But it's storytelling in this new way, where the audience gets to be the camera and gets to kind of, see what's going on in this world. If you have one of these things, then it becomes, a little more interesting. You can snap your phone onto the front, and then it's like you're living in this world, which is like even more cool. But, for the average person who's just got this, it's a neat experience. And one of the things that I'm like super excited about, kind of even like with Artella, is just being able to show creators that there are other formats of creating in. It's not just, short films or commercials or, pilots or different things. It's like, ooh, we could do like, I think a 360, that kind of VR experience is not too different from making like a film. It's kind of, we did some tests here, and we're going to publish kind of our findings on it, but it's like a way you render it out is like in a spherical way. And then you can like export it to YouTube, and then it's like you immediately get this 360 experience where your character's running around, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, like this kind of opens up new doors. So I mean, I think still it's so new, people don't totally know what it is yet, but that's why I want to encourage people to check out the Spotlight Story stuff, because I think it's not like tiptoeing, it's like blowing the doors open to go like, look, you can tell crazy stories in this new, way. So kudos for being like one of the first ones to be able to do that.
Thanks. It's funny because I wasn't exactly looking to do it, but when somebody says, hey, you want to come do your own thing, and it's whatever you want to do, and you make the call, yeah, I think I'm going to do that. And then what I found doing it was, there are certainly many things that are different, and I altered my way of working because instead of doing, we did some thumbnail boards at first and trying to blaze through it, and Mark Oftedal helped me with that as well, just to get kind of that first through line through, and then I'm like, let's get the previs as quickly as possible, and we use this phrase all the time, get it on device. Mm-hmm. So I can see it in its native format. And that is the most important thing. That is really just, and you can control. A lot of people are saying, hey, the director loses all control. That's actually not true. I use lighting, I use color, and sure, people can look wherever they want, but they can do that in a movie theater. Mm-hmm. But we've drawn their attention to that giant screen in front of them, so they can stare at the wall if they want to, but there's nothing really entertaining there. And so you can make the decision to not put anything there and focus in there, or you can say, hey, there's this little subplot over here.
Yeah.
And explore that. And that's the fun of it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, it's multiple viewings, Yeah. Like you see things each time, something new. Yeah, I was watching Pearl the other day, and then like the next time I watched it, I just kind of was just totally not paying attention to the main story because I did that the first time. Yeah. But then there's like all this other stuff going on. So it was just like, oh man, that's so like texture is like, wow, there's a lot.
On Ice, there are whole songs that you won't hear unless you go look in another direction.
Oh, that's awesome.
You can hear a whole song play through.
Wow.
Whole gags play through. So yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool, man. Well, here we have a pretty neat question here. This is from Eric. He asks, shifting gears a little bit, can you talk a little bit about how development of a show works? Like what you're doing now.
Yeah. It varies studio to studio, but it's essentially kind of the same. It's you have an idea, and in the case of, I'm in-house at Disney, so that's what I'm there to do. So I'll throw several things at them, and they'll kind of pick and choose what they like. And then we'll start to kind of focus in on something for a little bit, and I'll do a little artwork. Maybe I'll write something for it. And then then you start to you work with the development department. In the case of Disney, I'm working with my old buddy Shane Prigmore, who is head of creative at Disney TV, amazing artist, creator in his own right, and now like I get to tease him because now he's a suit. And cool. But he's a really good ally to have. And then folks like Kimberly Dennison and Elizabeth Taylor and Eric Coleman. Then like so I just had a big pitch yesterday. So I had pitched them the premise for an idea. They liked it. They said, that sounds like really great material. And then I have weekly check-ins. Mm-hmm. And then every week I start to add to the story and what the series is going to be. And it's different than feature development because usually with features, you're answering one question or you're talking about one theme or one subject. But in a TV series, you can explore multiple themes. You can explore multiple characters, multiple outcomes. You can watch characters evolve over a much longer period of time. So it's really world building. But I start to build a world that is going to really encourage lots of stories because you want this, 26 episodes in a season. Then I start to make decisions like I want this to be 22-minute episodes rather than 11-minute episodes, which is other, some animated shows are 11 minutes.
Yeah.
And we just it starts to evolve and working with that crew, and then I'll go away again on my own. And then yesterday I had a big pitch where I got into a point where I'm like, this is the show. This is what it is. How do you guys feel about it? And, they're really into where I'm going. They had some feedback. They helped me to focus more because when you've been in the middle of it for so long, you kind of haven't zoomed out for a while and you need that perspective.
Yeah.
And so I find it really great to be able to work with a development group and kind of get their perspective on it. And again, I have my friends too where I'll say, hey, here's this idea. Like Joe Pitt sits a couple doors down from me. Craig McCracken's right next door to me. And I'll just be like, hey, guys, can I show you something real quick? Can I pitch it and see what you feel about it? Am I being clear enough? Did you get this? Because things that are clear in my head, they don't know about.
Yeah.
And it's really, storytelling is about clarity, and you want people to be able to follow it. Doesn't mean it can't be complex, but you want it to be clear. So that's just a kind of a very condensed version of the process. And with me, because I like to do a lot of things, write, draw, storyboard, I do a little bit of all those things on my own, and we start to pull other folks in. So
yeah, that's exciting. I mean, it sounds amazing. I know we have a lot of people in Artella that are, they're developing ideas, and their thought is that they'll create something of a pitch and then be able to take that and pitch it around. So you're Shannon Tindle. You have this like epic history of awesomeness. I'm sure you get people calling you. You probably don't even have to make calls anymore. Hey, I got an idea.
Yeah. What's funny? I actually had a conversation with Rick Baker. The world famous makeup artist.
Makeup effects.
Talk, at Dreamworks a couple years ago, and he was talking to me about a project that he had all these challenges and people were questioning his ideas. And at this point, Rick Baker's one of the most winningest, he's won, I don't know if he's won the most, but he's won a ton of Oscars. Mm-hmm. And what he said to me, he said, Shannon, the only difference between me and you when I pitch and me when I was like 19 doing this is I just make a lot more money now than I did before, but I still have to deal with the same crap.
That's crazy.
So it's not, it is like I can call up friends and say, hey, I've got this idea, and I can get that meeting, and I can get a meeting at a higher level than when I was starting out, and you kind of got to start and kind of work your way up to the top to get yes or a no. So I can get to the top more quickly, but it's still a process.
Yeah.
It's still a challenge. And so it's pretty much the same, except I can get a yes or no more quickly.
Okay. Now that's a cool thing to know a little bit about. Like if someone's starting out, do you have any advice for them? They're making a pitch and they want to shop it around. I know Carlos, who's one of our co-founders, who's like amazing creator. Yeah. He has an agent and he has a bunch of ideas and he's got like little animatics of these different ideas. That's the process he's following. I'm just curious, like, do you have any tips or advice for people now that you're already have done it, like things that you would, don't do this, maybe do some of this,
Yeah. I'm a bit of an anomaly in that I don't have any. I have an attorney. I
Yeah.
don't have an owner manager.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily by choice. It just kind of worked out that way.
Yeah.
And so, like, if I have an idea, I got to go. I do the knocking myself, which is good in some ways because I save money. I don't have to pay 5 to 10% to somebody.
Right.
But it's hard in others because I can only hit one at a time, and in agents, there's a team of them. What I would say to anybody who's going out to pitch their stuff is, again, make sure it's really personal because that makes it unique. And you might get a million no's, but somebody is going to recognize the unique quality of what you're doing. And again, I'm going to point to, because he's such an inspiration to me, is Jorge Gutierrez. This is a guy that has never once wavered from what he's about. He got advice from Jules Engle early on, like, stop trying to mimic other people. These personal things that you've done, he's got a great story about how he got into Cal Arts. He's like, this is you, and this is what I want to see. And that guy has so fervently stuck to that. And you see it in his film, Book of Life. I mean, that is very, he's an auteur in animation, which almost never happens. You got like Miyazaki and Takahata and those guys, but it almost never happens because you got to get consumed by the big studios and things get diluted. And then he just had his art show here in LA, which was a huge success, big critical success, and it's just him being him.
Yeah.
And but that didn't mean, like, he's been doing this for years, trying to get a feature made, trying to get TV shows made. He did LT Gray and did that for a couple seasons, and then they killed it.
Okay.
So once you've gotten that one thing, that doesn't mean you're like set. You got to keep. He and I are out constantly talking about it because a lot of the stuff that we want to do are a little bit more kind of independent ideas, and how do you find your way in a studio system that just rehashes of things. Well,
right.
The next two things I'm working on are my original ideas. One is inspired by a Disney property, but it's my thing, and my Sony's thing is completely original. Jorge's next thing is an original idea. So I would say that is, I kind of say find a way to get your way. Yeah. And that would be my advice, is just make sure that what you're delivering is unique, because they're going to see a million pitches based on whatever the latest Pixar movie is or the latest Cartoon Network show. Adventure Time is a success because that's Penn Ward. I've watched Penn since he was Cal Arts in school. That's Penn. That's him. That's why it's a success. Regular show with JG, that's him, man. Like, when I met him 15 years ago, that was him. Yeah. So
that's cool.
That's my advice.
No, that's awesome, man. I love that. Yeah, that's huge. Because in the end of the day, that's what you have, right? I mean, you want to be authentic. You want to bring ideas. You want to be inspired. It seems like, it could be hard in a studio system to do that, but along the way, that might be the thing that keeps you motivated, even if it does get diluted in some way. Like, the core of it is that integrity that you originally have. So that's cool, man. And now let's see. I want to make sure. It's like we're at time, but we got a couple of questions. If we can sneak them in, if you have a couple more minutes, that would be awesome. Yeah. All right. Cool. Let's see. This is fun. I like this. Is from Omar. He says, "When are you done with the story? Is it usual to keep changing the story even in production?"
Real simply, I like to start with a tight script. That way, everybody's very clear on kind of where my head is. Then we start boarding. And when you start boarding, you want to me, it's like get it up as quickly as possible to see if it works, cut it together. Then you really, and you're relying on your story artists, then you really start to kind of dig into it. Then you see that the ideas that worked on the page may not necessarily work when they're cut together. You see that maybe there are better ideas that are suggested by your team, and again, constantly looking to make it better. And there are a lot of people who have a different perspective, and they're going to make your idea way better than it could ever be. So be open to that. Usually, by the time you're in production, you want to be mostly done. Now, you can follow the progress of things like Zootopia. There's a big documentary on how they were in production, and they did a total kind of like switch. I would imagine that it's a great film, but I would imagine even Disney would say that was tough to do because then it gets expensive, right? So I like to try and lock as much as I can. You allow for a little bit in production, and the changes you get there are in performance. And you have your animators really like hammering on all cylinders. They bring an extra level to it. It's that classic Disney plusing of it.
Yeah,
so
that's cool.
You don't want to make changes in production, but sometimes it's a necessity.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's cool. That's good to hear. I know that, having been at Pixar for a while, I was there for like 7 years. Yeah, I mean, they change everything, like all the way up until the day it comes out. Because they're constantly screening it and making sure it hits. And if it doesn't, I mean, we even had shots that like were fully animated. I remember on Nemo when I was working on that, Andrew came in and he was like, "I'm sorry, we got to cut this huge chunk that you just finished because it just wasn't like the section just needed to be trimmed." And it was cool. I mean, that costs a lot of money. Not everybody can afford to do that.
Right.
But I think their goal is just to like protect story at all costs, and it usually works out pretty well for them. But that's a luxury that not everybody has. So that's cool to hear. Like, in this world, it's ideal to kind of have pretty much the key story figured out and then kind of bring in new elements to flesh it out and tighten it up.
Well, that's, again, it's a great theory to have. It's a great philosophy to follow. That doesn't mean it's always going to happen, and it's why when you be nimble because you've got the money to kind of switch the way that Pixar and Disney do, you can make it better. Although I would love to see what those films were and to compare it back to back.
Yeah.
To see, is it better or is it just different?
Right.
That's just, and I'm not making a judgment call on it. It's just,
that's true.
I mean, I'm interested in seeing, or is it because you've seen it so many times now you don't think it's as good, but it actually is. So that stuff I'm endlessly curious about. I know, like with Jorge on this film, he was working like a third to a quarter of the budget of what a Dreamworks or Pixar is, and so they couldn't do those things. And so you got to lock it and go forward.
That's awesome. We have one last question, and then I'll let you go. Let's see. This is from Catherine, and she asks, have you had a lot of project films, etc., that you started with a group but were unable to finish? If so, what have you learned from those unfinished projects, and do you hope to ever go back to them? Great.
Yeah, I've worked on whole scripts that were actually in active development that didn't get made. I've worked on, recently I had a treatment that I wrote that I thought was going to go forward. The studio was very excited by it. This wasn't Disney, this was another studio that I thought was going to go forward, and then it just didn't. It just kind of died there, even though they loved it, and it was a weird situation. But I don't ever give up on those ideas, because if I really like an idea and I spent time on it now and I kind of know where it's going, I'll just put it away for a little bit.
Yeah.
I'll continue to have other ideas, but Kubo was one of those things I came up with 16 years ago. It was really as a gift to my wife, and because she'd taken care of her mother, and then it was able to evolve over the years into a narrative. The idea that I'm working on at Sony right now is one I've had for 10 years, and at one point it was going to be like a special on Cartoon Network, and that didn't happen. Then they talked about it as a TV series at another studio at some point. We wanted to make it, and I was like, I want to make it as a movie. And what I have to say is, like, it actually got better over time, because it became more personal, because it has to do with fathers and their children. Yeah. And now that I have a daughter, now it actually made it fun. Yeah. And so it was mature enough to make into a thing now. And when it was that mature, I think that's Sony recognized it. Although Mike Moon, who'd been a big fan of the project, I pitched it at Disney years ago, and he was like, "Now is the time. Let's do this."
Wow, that's so cool.
So that's what we're trucking along on now. So
that's exciting. Oh, that's so cool that, like, as your personal development in life matured, that your story idea was able to mature as well. That's actually pretty awesome to hear. Like, being a father, but having this story and then bringing more of the authenticity of that experience into it kind of made it kind of have that extra little glow that it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Well, thank you so much for
Yeah.
being a part, man. I mean, you're amazing inspiration, and I just really appreciate your time. I know you're super busy, and I really love that you're willing to give back to other creators like yourself that are getting started. Some of them are experienced as well, but a lot of people are just getting started, and
Yeah.
that's our mission, is to just really empower people no matter where they live to be able to tell their stories and get them out there and create great teams and make content. So thank you so much for supporting us.
Well, and I got to say too, it's just I'm glad that you guys are doing it because again, it's something that guys have been doing in kind of private for a while, and that you're organizing this is really amazing. But
Uh,
also the concept behind Artella that there is a different way to make films where you can make something that looks really incredible, except you're tapping in all these resources instead of just this small little resource in this one location here.
mhm.
That to me is something people have been trying to plug away at and turn into something. And just the results that I'm seeing so far
Yeah.
is really exciting
Yeah.
because it varies. People are talking about something they should have been talking about a long time ago, but diversity. But
Mhm.
man, if I can get a point of view from somebody on the other side of the world, that's going
Yeah.
to be unique from just all, I have really great friends and they are diverse culturally, but we all work in the same business. And I think we kind of, we're in this business and we work with what these ideas are. But if I
Yeah.
could work with somebody who is in Africa or New Zealand
Yeah.
or Japan and bring their unique point of view to it,
Yeah.
that to me is a whole new resource
Yeah.
that can really lead to some exciting things. So
Yeah. One of the projects I'm working on right now, I'm directing a little piece called Thistle One, and it's a ton of fun. Right now, it's like my CG supervisors in Austria, my kind of color key artist is in Colombia. I
wow,
got animators in Mexico, Florida, New York. We just wrapped animation. And then we have a bunch of the Look Dev crew in Malaysia. They
yeah,
have a studio over there, and they're helping us out. And it's just like, that's crazy, you know? I mean,
yeah,
and it's working, and it's like so exciting, and people are motivated, and we get together once a week through like this, it's 11
yeah,
o'clock at night for me, because we're trying to accommodate all the different time zones. But I mean, it's just the beauty of seeing what all these different people are bringing to it is like, again, like I had this kernel of an idea, but it's turned into something so much better as a
yeah,
result of being able to just tap into these people that are so talented but can't necessarily get a work visa, or they aren't necessarily in the same room. So yeah,
yeah.
there is a beauty to it, and I'm excited to show people more of what that entails. CTN this year. Are you going to be there this year?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it. Yeah,
Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll have a couple projects. We'll have a booth and stuff. A couple projects finished by then, which will be fun because it takes a while to finish this stuff. So
yeah, yeah,
so stay at
yeah.
it. But thanks, Shannon. Really appreciate it, man. I'm gonna let you off the hook now, but again, just really
Awesome,
appreciate it. I think we're all really stoked that you joined us, and best of luck to everything, man.
awesome. Same with you guys. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.